Now that you have Visual Studio installed, let's take a moment to get familiar with the window. When you first start Visual Studio, the Start page loads. The Start page contains a home page of various links and information that you need to get started. Over here in the What's New on Microsoft Platforms, you can click these links to go to various Microsoft websites to learn about new features. Under the Announcements section, this will automatically populate with news from various Microsoft feeds. So you can see that there's some information about various Visual Studio items and upcoming Microsoft products. Over here in the Start section is where you can either start a new project or open a current project. We'll get into this later when we start our first project. There are various windows that hang out on the side docked into the right and left sides of the Visual Studio window. Over here on the left, we have the Server Explorer, which allows us to connect to various server items. So you can see here we have access to the Microsoft Azure platform, which is their cloud server processing. We can also make connections to various databases or other web servers if we're working on those kinds of projects. The toolbox is what comes in handy when we're making GUI applications. So the toolbox will contain all of the various form controls like text boxes, list boxes, and labels that we'll need for making various graphical interfaces. Over on the right, we have the Solution Explorer. We'll look more at the Solution Explorer when we open a project, but the Solution Explorer is what shows all of the files that are currently in use in our C# application. The Class view allows us to view various components of our class. So once we've built a class and we're working on that object, we'll be able to use the Class view in more depth. Down at the bottom of Visual Studio, we have some more important windows. The error list is where any errors in our code syntax will be shown. So if you make mistakes while you're writing your code, they'll show up here in the error list so that you can easily check them. The output window shows console output items. So as we're working, if we're logging items to the output window for debugging purposes, this is where they'll show up. The Find Symbol results allows us to search for various symbol items inside of our code. So if we're looking for various instances of a variable or a class object, then this is the window where we're going to be able to perform that operation. So now that you're familiar with Visual Studio, let's make one small change before we get started with our first project. Up here on the Tools menu, come down to Options. And in this Options section, find Text Editor and go ahead and expand that. And click on the All Languages section. Make sure this Line Numbers checkbox is enabled. The Line Numbers checkbox is what's going to give us line numbers down the left-hand side of our code editor window. This is going to come in handy when we're talking about specific pieces of code. We can reference them by line number. And it's also going to come in handy if we have errors in the error list, since the error list is going to tell us which line number is having the problem. So once you have that enabled, go ahead and click OK. And in the next video, we will get started with making our first C# application project.